Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 203. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards, software engineer turned short film and web series producer. Welcome, David Tinsley.
Hey, how you doing, Dr. Frances?
I am perfect. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your business?
Okay, so I've been pretty much filming over the last decade, and it's been a passion of mine dating all the way back to before college, probably when I was adolescent, and I used to kind of sneak and go see films. You know, when my mother didn't know, I would tell her I was going up the street to a friend's house and would go to this theater called Bel Air Theater in Detroit. It was off of 8 Mile, and I would go see movies because it provided me an escape from the world that, I lived in. So I grew up in a single parent household. My father was in prison. Mother raised me and my sister. There was a lot of violence, a lot of drugs, a lot of bad influences around us, but there were also a lot of great things as well. I had a lot of great mentors who helped me to get to where I'm at, a lot of good influences and people who just tried to steer me in the right direction. So film has always been an escape for me. And then eventually I went to University of Michigan. I graduated with a degree in engineering and my minor was in African American theater. From that point, I moved to Phoenix to pursue my career in engineering, worked for a company called Lockheed Martin, which eventually landed me in California because I transferred from the Lockheed Martin business unit out in Arizona to the Lockheed Martin business unit in Palmdale, California. So once I got to California, I continued doing film, continued auditioning for different projects. And I got to a point to where I wanted to not complain about the roles that I was getting or the stuff that was available to me. I wanted to just change it and create it myself. So my wife kind of put the bug in my ear. Her name is Dr. Bridget Tinsley. She's a dentist. And we started doing our own thing. We started creating our own projects. We've created several web series, several short films. And this year we just released our first feature length film, which is titled Project 8. So that's been my journey leading all the way up to now. And Project 8 is really a film about myself. I moved from California back to my home state, Detroit, Michigan, in 2018. And the company moved me back here, paid me a lot of money, gave me a big bonus to move my family back, but they overworked me. And I was working 65 hours a week. I had already had a 2-year-old son at that time. My wife was pregnant with our daughter, and I just wasn't able to be present with my family. So once my wife had our daughter and she went back to work, she told me to quit. She said, "Hey, I've never seen you like this. You're not present. You're not putting anything into your business. Just take a break." And it was a hard decision for me because it was the first time that I had ever walked away from a job and didn't have another job waiting for me. But it was also liberating because what it gave me is courage and it took away that fear. And in those 10 months, I realized that I was all right. So we ended up buying a few investment properties, rental properties, where we were able to create a passive income. And I was able to create this project, which is titled Project 8. And this project is basically about accepting your truth and walking in your purpose. And it really starts out with the lead character, June Shelton, basically quitting his job, kind of like I did, to embark in his journey of becoming a real estate investor and buying rental properties and so on and so forth. And there's another character in it by the name of Fatima Mitchum. She's actually based out of Detroit as well. And she's already walking in her purpose because she has her own blog thing. She's a photographer, but she's having a hard time accepting her truth. So the tagline of the film is when truth meets purpose, you get freedom pretty much. So these two characters, one needs to accept their truth. The other needs to be willing to walk in this purpose. They sort of help each other in a symbiotic way throughout the film, and they become better for it. And the number 8, from a biblical standpoint, means regeneration. It means resurrection, a new beginning. So these characters kind of have to be there for each other in order for them to resurrect and become the new them. So that's what the film is all about. The film talks about financial freedom through real estate, strong female voices, Black women. And of course, my wife, Bridget Tinsley, she helped me with that because she would review the script prior to me filming it and say, oh, nope, this is not what a Black woman would say. You need to change that. So we have strong Black women who understand the importance of loving themselves and working for themselves. We also talk about breaking free from the corporate world in order to pursue your purpose, not working more for somebody else than you do for yourself. We talk about healthy eating. We talk about the vegan journey and this, that, and the third, because obviously health is wealth. We also talk about respecting and protecting Black women. I have an episode where I highlight all of these Black women that were killed at the hands of crooked cops within the last 10 years. And when I was researching this, I realized that out of these 12 women that we highlight, at least 10 of them I didn't know, but I knew all of the Black men that were killed. So it was me kind of putting this out there to hold Black men accountable and say, hey, whenever a Black man dies at the hand of a cop, Black women are the first ones on the front line at our defense to protest and riot and so on and so forth. And we need to reciprocate and have that same energy when something happens to them. We need to protect them from cops, bad cops. We need to protect them from human trafficking and so on and so forth. So I wanted to talk about that, but I also wanted to highlight the beauty of my city, because all of the films that I had saw being shot in Detroit highlighted drug dealing, the strip club, so on and so forth. And I wanted to just show the beauty of it and capture real good human beings, people that I grew up with, who wanted to do right by people, wanted to succeed. They're flawed, but they're positive, right? So you create these realistic yet positive images of people from your city and give them a voice, as opposed to the stuff that I had seen. I just wanted to create a balance, right? So all of these things this film achieves, and now people can watch it on Vimeo on demand right now. So it's out.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. Now, how did you get your actresses and actors?
So it's funny story is that when I moved back to Detroit, I didn't know if I was going to be able to film again, because in LA, there's a plethora of resources at your fingertips. You know, you can call film equipment companies and rent equipment. You know, you can actually hold auditions because there's nothing but actors in LA, right? And most of my friends were actors. So when I was creating film in LA, what I was really doing is calling my friends and saying, hey, I created this project. You want to be a part of it? And I wanted to give them a vehicle or an environment which would allow them to grow, so that when the big opportunities came about, they would be polished and prepared for it. So then I get here in Detroit and I'm like, man, I don't know how I'm gonna find anybody. And I ended up finding June because he watched a project that I had shot while I was living out in LA. And then he did a commentary on it over Instagram, and someone tagged me in it. And he was so animated and just funny and humorous that I was like, man, I got to meet this guy. So I ended up going back and forth with him through direct messenger on Instagram, realized he lived in Detroit. So in my mind, I said, man, when I create something, I'm going to reach out to this guy once I'm back home and in Detroit. And then Fatima, I met her because she was already doing a blog series on YouTube, and her voice just captivated me. And I needed somebody that had a strong voice, because the role that she plays in my project, Project 8, she's a blogger. So she has monologues where she's talking about different social issues and so on and so forth. And her voice just kind of captivated me. And then I found out that she lived in Michigan. So really, I didn't even have an idea of what this project was going to be when I met these people, but I knew once I created something that I would have them involved. And then I met both of them in person to sort of get their energy, their vibe, and I sort of crafted the characters around their real life. So although this is a fictional story, it's really rooted in reality, because I took pieces from their own lives. Even the young lady Fatima mentioned, when I met her, she was 2 months pregnant already. And I can remember telling her the story that I wanted to do and the ideas that I had as far as this film at the time. And then she started crying, and she doesn't mind me sharing the story right now. But she started crying, and I'm like, wow, if she can be vulnerable with me like that, and this is the first time that she met me in person, just imagine what I can get from her. And she started crying because she basically said, hey, you're passionate about this project. I really want to help you. Mind you, she had never acted before. So it was really just her spirit. And I knew that with the type of work ethic she had in her spirit, I would be able to, get her where she needed to be. And it wasn't hard to, because she's just a natural. But she started crying because she felt like her pregnancy would get in the way and she wouldn't be able to be a part of it. So we wrote the pregnancy into the film. So when you actually see the film, we shot it in sequence. So every segment, her stomach is bigger and it's not a prop belly. And then by the time we finished filming, maybe about 3 or 4 weeks later, she had the baby. So again, this is rooted in real life. And I'm really happy that I was able to find these people from my home state to help me capture my first feature film in a state that made me who I am today, Detroit, Michigan.
Shout out to Motor City, Detroit.
Yes.
What are you most grateful for, David?
I'm most grateful for just a strong support system. I had a strong mother, Beverly Manley. She lives here in Southfield, Michigan. And she always taught me to be confident, taught me to not accept no for an answer, to not make excuses, these type of things, because she didn't make excuses. She had to raise us and be able to provide for us off of a single income. And of course, it wasn't a lot of money at the time. And then while doing that, she was still pursuing her bachelor's degree. So she did all of these things and she was able to multitask and didn't make any excuses. So I apply that same thing to my real life now. I don't make any excuses. If I'm not able to do something, I'm not blaming other people. And oftentimes we do want to point the finger when it's really us. You know, when you look in the mirror, you know, it's really you. I think pointing the finger sometimes impedes you or causes you to sort of drown in a pool of complacency. So I had a strong mother who basically taught me all of these things. And I had a strong sister who was like my mom part two, who also was on my back about things. And at that time, I didn't understand, but now I do, because the reason why I respect my wife the way I do and I appreciate her the way I do is because they were a strong voice in my life, and they always taught me things and taught me to say the right things and to do the right things and to be respectful and to be considerate and basically taught me how to love, how to feel and express those things. So again, that's the thing that I'm most grateful for, is having a very strong support system. And my mom's husband, Terry Manley, he was the father figure that I never had. They got married when right before I went off to college. And I can remember telling him that he was the reason why, you know, I am who I am today when it comes to how I treat my wife, because although my mother and sister would tell me what to do and how to do it and what to say and when not to say it, I actually saw him apply it. So whenever my mother would come home from work and she would have flowers waiting for her on the kitchen counter, I'm like, oh, wow, that made my mother feel special. That was something that he did because it was in his heart, you know, and it was just who he was. So my mother told me what to do. And this guy, Terry Manley, just kind of came and demonstrated it. So that support system is really why I am who I am today.
Talk about your top two influencers in your life. I know you mentioned your bonus father, your mother, and your sister, and I don't know if it's different, but talk about your top two influencers and what lessons did they teach you?
So top influences, I would say my wife, Dr. Bridget Tinsley, is one of my top influences, because when I met her, I was very emotional, very passionate, didn't really have control over my emotions the way that I do now. And she's always cool, calm, and collected. She's a dentist. So I think that's kind of a prerequisite, or at least it helps you, because you'll get yourself into some sticky situations and you have to be calm in the midst of that. So with her, she knows how to sort of remove her emotions from something and look at things objectively. So that's the thing that she taught me. And anybody, especially entrepreneurs who are looking to be successful in business, you do have to have an objective mind, because you may develop a product and you can't say, well, I'm not going to sell it to this person because they're racist, or I'm not going to sell it to this person because they're white, or I'm not going to sell it to this person because they're whatever, right? You're selling a product and you want to create a really good product so that you can sell it to as many people as possible. So my wife really taught me how to look at things objectively and not necessarily take things to heart, and understand the difference between when to be emotional and when to just be business minded, so to speak. So that's number one. And I would say the second biggest influence is when I moved back to Michigan in January 2018, a guy by the name of Gregory Franklin, and I'm kind of putting him out there, but he stays across the way from me in the same courtyard. And he just not a flashy guy. You can tell he lives well below his means. He's a great family man, has a wife and 2 kids. And once I started having conversations with him, I realized that he was the landlord to maybe like 37 tenants, I think. Right. And he wasn't even 40 at the time that I met him. Didn't have a 9-to-5, was completely free from the corporate life. And he was able to move how he wanted to and make the decisions he wanted to, and wasn't worried about saying things that would offend people. You know, he could talk about Black Lives Matter. He could talk about whatever other movements without having to worry about the repercussions or ramifications from somebody else, because he had control and autonomy over his life, and it wasn't somebody else signing his paycheck. So he taught me the importance of being able to work for yourself also. And I can remember while I was filming Project 8, I was coming up with these excuses and talking to him and saying, man, I don't have time. My kids are young and, you know, they depend on me. My wife depends on me, this, that, and the third. I still had this, actually at the time I wasn't working the 9-to-5, but I was still stressed out about being out there on my own, sort of being broken away from the matrix. And I can remember him looking me in my eye and telling me, stop making excuses, get it done. I don't want to hear any of that. Figure it out. You know what I'm saying? So if you don't have enough time, manufacture more time. And that stuck with me even to this day. And he's somebody that I definitely go to whenever I'm at a point where I do need some advice, or I need somebody to just hold me accountable and say, shut up, keep moving forward.
David, what can we do right now to support your business?
Right now, you can follow me on Instagram at Tinbridge Films. And I have a link in my bio, which will take you to all of my projects that I've created over the last 10 years. And Project 8, which just released this year, you can go to vimeo.com/on-demand/Project 8. And you can purchase the film for $9.99. And it's literally 8 minutes of laughter. It's fun, but it's also a lot of gems being dropped in there. And it's rare that you see Black people being portrayed in a positive yet realistic light. And it's funny, it's hip, it's young characters. But again, we are trying to educate and edify as well. So again, you can go there and you can purchase it. You can support it and understand that it's going to Black people. I paid everybody who was involved with this project, and everybody from the beginning to the end is Black. They don't fall outside of the race. The actors, all of the people who provided music, and of course myself. I don't have a big set of people. It's me, it's the camera, and it's the characters. I don't have a big crew at all. I'm able to do the editing. I'm able to do all of these things, and I can keep the overhead very low, and that helps. But obviously, over time, I am looking to develop that team so that I don't have to necessarily put as much on myself.
There are so many brands and businesses that are dominating. Talk about a brand or a business that is dominating that you admire and why.
I would say Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry is probably one of my biggest influences. Even when people sort of critique his work and talk about the quality of it, I understand his vision. I understand what he's doing. And since he came into Hollywood, I believe his first deal was with Lionsgate. Maybe he had a 10-picture deal, right? And that deal ended, and then he started doing TV series. And, he released the TV series on TBS. He released another one on OWN, that Oprah Winfrey's network. So he's done all of these things. But what I recently found out is that he owns the rights to all of these things. And that's kind of unheard of, especially in the Black community. Oftentimes when we partner with different distribution companies or production companies, it could be our idea, but they own the film. So like if you see Issa Rae's show Insecure on HBO, what happens when the show ends? Will Issa Rae be able to take that show and move it over to another network? Maybe not, because the distributor or distribution company or HBO itself may own rights to that. But with Tyler Perry, he owns all of his catalog outright. So he can basically outsource it or license it to different networks and make money off of it. So it doesn't matter how much money he may make off of a project he releases tomorrow, because all of those people who are new to him, who watches his new project, are going to go back and look at the rest of his catalog. And if they do, he's continuously making money off of that. So I would say he's my biggest influence, not only because of his business savvy, but also the fact that he moves in silence. Like he has this big, massive production company or studio out in Atlanta right now, and most people didn't even know he was making it. But in our community, especially the Black community, people don't move in silence. Even when it comes to, a lot of these Black movements, protest movements, this, that, and the third, so people can see our intentions a mile away. And a lot of times when you're loud and you're boisterous and you're telling people what you're doing, that's when you're met with the most resistance, because they can see what you're trying to do. But with Tyler Perry, he was able to move silently. And as a result, we just saw this big studio manifest itself years later. And when he had this big grand opening where he invited Spike Lee and Denzel and all of the big Black Hollywood stars to the ceremony, again, hardly anybody knew that he was even making this thing, and I just think his ability to move in silence and understand his worth, in the sense that whenever he negotiated his deals, he was able to keep ownership of it after, the licensing period ended, just makes him phenomenal. Biggest influence for sure.
That's awesome. And it reminds me of the story that I just saw about Master P, and it amazes me. And I like
Yes, I saw that too.
Yeah. And I love when we understand the game and understand about control and understand about building generational wealth, intellectual property. So that's huge.
Absolutely. It's nothing wrong with working for somebody. I always say, just don't get to the point to where you're so consumed with that job that you end up working more for them than you do for yourself. The other thing is that when you are out here embarking on your entrepreneurial journey, it's good to not be desperate when you go to the table making these deals, because when you're desperate, you'll just do it because, you want to do it. Like I talk to a lot of actors and they get these roles and they're like, oh, I would have done it for free because I'm just happy to be on the set. But that's not the mindset that I want to have. So I always encourage people to not only, if you're an actor, it's nothing wrong with auditioning and trying to be a part of projects, but if you're doing your own thing on the side, then what happens is that when you negotiate those deals, In the other world, you have more leverage and you place more value upon yourself, and you're looking to get equity and perpetuity and all these other things that can create generational wealth for you and your family in the long run. So again, I never discourage people from working a job. I just always say or think that it's good to have multiple streams of revenue because you're never desperate for anything. And then you can have integrity and say things that you feel and not worry as much about the ramifications. So yeah, Master P and Tyler Perry, those two folks right there, you're not going to censor them or tell them what to say or what not to say because they own everything.
What is your vision for the next year or 5 years for your production company?
Vision for the next 5 years is to definitely get a team of people that I can trust so that I don't have to do everything by myself. And I think you saw that in the Master P movie where he was doing a lot of things. And then he said, hey, I got to go over here and try to do some sports agency type stuff, or I need to do real estate and I just need to diversify myself. He was thinking ahead because he knew the music success would only last so long because you're hot for a period of time and then you're not anymore. So he diversified himself and he made it so that he developed a team of people that would be able to get things done even when he wasn't present so that he can take his time and put it towards something else that can generate wealth for him. So the biggest thing for me is to be able to build a team, number one, and also is to be able to put out more projects that depict Black love in a positive yet realistic light, Black heterosexual love. And I don't have anything against anything else. That's just kind of what I know. So again, we have another project in works right now where I'm actually going to be doing like a documentary series on my family, me, my wife, and my 2 kids. And it'll be like an episodic sort of thing where, it gets released every week and people will be able to pay for either the entire season or buy the episode. So that's something that we're working on right now. And I've always done these Black love stories that felt real to people. So what's more real than me actually doing it with my own family? And we're very secure. We're very excited about it. We're also a little nervous about it, but we think it'll be something that people might get something out of. So that's the next thing.
David, if someone wrote a book about you, what is something that we don't know about you that would be revealed in the autobiography?
Something that I was an angry kid. I was extremely smart, but I was angry because I didn't have my father around. My father was in prison, or he went when I was 2, and then he got out when I was 7, then went back 10 months later and didn't get out again until I was in my early 20s. So he missed a huge chunk of my life. And as a result, I had some deep rooted insecurities and I just felt angry. And I would fight a lot in middle school, because I had to take this anger out on something. Got suspended a lot. So I went through these trials and tribulations. And so that's something that I think people would know about me. But I'm happy to say that story is ending good because since my dad has gotten out of prison, we've been able to rekindle our relationship. We've been able to revive it, and it's not what it would have been had he been there, but it's something different, and we accept that and we appreciate that, and we're moving forward. So I think just the lack of a male presence, my real biological father in the household, and the impact that it had on me, because now a lot of people meet me and they're like, man, you're so nice and you're so this and you're so that, but that just came with hard work. It came from surrounding myself with great people. And I have to give respect to my wife again because she put up with a lot of these things. We met when I was in college. I was 19, she was 18. I'm 36 now. So she didn't meet the person that I am today. But she definitely had some patience with me, and she understood what my potential was, and she didn't judge me. And that's why I love her, like, unconditionally for that. So yeah, that's something that people wouldn't know, the father aspect.
Thanks for sharing that and being so authentic, and just shout out to your wife and for you sharing with us that change is possible.
Yeah, most definitely. Change is possible. And I think understanding that you can relapse or revert back at any time is what will help you sustain the change. My father or stepfather, Terry Manley, he was addicted to drugs pretty bad back before he even met my mother. And he's been clean for decades now. And I think a part of him understanding why he's able to stay away from that is understanding that he can be right back at any moment. That addiction never leaves, right? And if somebody changes, understanding that that person that you were is still kind of there, you just have more control over it, and you have to keep working so that you don't revert and go back to that. That's being humble and being realistic about it, I think, is what kind of helps you sustain it.
Talk about change in COVID-19.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it wasn't a bad thing. I mean, I had to be honest with you. Me and my wife were kind of ripping and running. We had this crazy schedule where we would take our kids to Flint, Michigan. We live in Detroit, Michigan, right? So Flint, Michigan is like an hour and a half, hour, 15 minutes away. Actually, they stayed in Flushing, which is further than Flint from Detroit. And my wife works 3 days a week as a dentist by choice so that she can have more time with the kids. And also she's pursuing her own endeavors of becoming a business owner with her own practice. So she needed more time for those things. And, you know, being a dentist, living in Detroit where the expenses are extremely low affords us the ability to be able to do those things. But we would take our kids to Flint during the 3 days that she worked so that her parents could watch them. So literally we were living between Flint and Detroit, and it was just hard for us as far as the commute goes. So when COVID hit and they said, hey, work from home, it was like, oh, wow, we don't have to do this commute anymore. And it gave us more time to put towards other things. So we didn't panic. We understand that things happen in life, and sometimes it's unfortunate, but what do? Do you sit and you complain? Do you allow it to hold you back or inhibit you? Or do you try to figure out how to persevere and how to take advantage of a lot of the things that are going on? You know, oftentimes when people are afraid due to a pandemic or anything that's happening in the world, a lot of times those are times where people who are rich or wealthy or have a wealthy mindset can capitalize and benefit from it, whether it's through real estate, whether it's through stock markets, whatever. The stock market, since this COVID thing, has been going up and down. But if I'm fearful and I'm worried about my job and I'm worried about this and I'm worried about my health and so on and so forth, if I put all of my energy into that, then I can't notice all these other opportunities around me to actually make money. So that once this is over, I'll be in a better position than I was before the COVID hit. So actually for me and my wife, it hasn't been a bad thing, but there is an adjustment because you have to be safe and you have to take certain preventative measures for the folks around us. We still visit our mother and our fathers and this, that, and the third. So we have to be responsible, you know, in terms of how we move out here so that we don't potentially harm them.
David, what is your best discovery?
Best discovery, I will say, is knowing that I was the only one in my way. And that's a hard conversation to have. It's a hard pill to swallow. But growing up, you're angry, you know, especially if you don't have your dad around and you're blaming him, or you're blaming the environment in which you grew up in, or you're blaming this teacher who has something against you, or you blaming whomever else. And, you know, I got to a point to where, you know, through the help of my wife, who doesn't make excuses, where I realized that I was standing in my own way, you know, and I was sort of creating adversaries that only existed in my mind. So my greatest discovery is just holding myself accountable.
David, something that you said that is really not pivotal. You said something very profound about forgiveness, discovery, and also walking in your own truth and authentic voice. Talk to our audience, because I find that there is a lot of people that are still stuck in the past and they are angry and they cannot get past their past to move forward and to really find their authentic voice and their passion and to live a fulfilling life.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big deal. You know, oftentimes the reason why people are angry while working their 9 to 5s is because they feel like they're being used, right? So every time, you know, I guess once a year you get a performance rating. If it doesn't look the way you want it to, then you're upset and you're distraught. And that's because you put everything into your job and you're not putting everything into your purpose. So for me, I can care less about what the performance rating is because I know I'm there to get a check. So I can take that check and take care of my family and put it into my business. And I understand what my purpose is. And I've accepted that truth to be what it is. But oftentimes people are upset who work in corporate because they're accepting the wrong truth. One truth, or I guess the lie may be that, oh, this is my purpose and I need to work this job and I need to continue to work my way up the ladder and I need to continue to help the owner of this company get rich as opposed to putting more into myself outside of work. That's a lie that they've accepted. For some people, that may be the truth, but for some people who are miserable working that 9 to 5, it's a lie, because no matter how far you move up, no matter what type of ratings you get, you're still not going to feel fulfilled. You're still not going to feel full, right? So the biggest thing is accepting that truth. And once you accept that truth, you can walk in your purpose. Before I walked away from my job back in 2018, and again, this job had gave me a big bonus. They paid me a lot of money to work there. I accepted a truth months prior. And the truth was that, no, this isn't, this is a part of who I am, but I'm much more than this. And then once I did that, it took me another 4 months to actually walk in my purpose and leave there. So again, that's important. But the other thing that you mentioned about forgiveness is I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't forgiven my father for certain things. If I hadn't realized that, man, it's hard for a Black man to grow up in this country today. So imagine how hard it was for him back in the 70s or the 80s. And the fact that he didn't have his own parents, he was adopted, or put up for adoption at birth. So he doesn't have a connection to his real parents. And even, his foster parents, there was some difficulties and issues. So he grew up a hard life, and I won't go into that because that's his story to tell. But I'll say that I've had a lot of forgiveness for him and also empathy, especially being a man who has a wife and kids now and understanding how difficult things may be. So in doing that, it just kind of freed me and allowed me to be who I am and allowed me to accept my truths and walk in my purpose even more. When you're carrying those burdens around and you're not forgiving people and this, that, and the third, it's not good, because not only does it affect you, but it affects the people around you. Now, I was the type of person that it affected me in a way where I kind of shut down. And if you shut down and you can't be present with your kid when he's asking you to look at a sentence that he wrote, or hey, Dad, look at this toy that I built or whatever, you can't be present, right? So it was affecting me that way, to where I just shut down. Even my wife, she would have conversations with me and I wouldn't be able to recall everything maybe weeks after the fact, right? But then you have some people that do it outwardly and they become verbally abusive, they become physically abusive, and all of these things. So forgiving is the biggest way for you to not only free yourself, but for you to heal yourself and become the best version of you possible. Sometimes that requires therapy, which is kind of taboo in our community as well. A lot of times we do need to reach out and be able to talk to people, especially people like Dr. Francis Richards, right? Who can help people find their voices or to become the best version of themselves and stop thinking that we can solve everything ourselves.
Talk to a younger David. What advice would you give a younger you?
The advice that I would give to a younger me, I would say, would be to not take any moment for granted. The younger me was taking it a day at a time. I went to middle school because that's what I was supposed to do. I went to high school because that's what people told me to do. And then I went to college because I didn't understand what I wanted to do. And I did all of these things because I was just clueless of who I was and what I wanted to be. So the me now would basically tell the younger me to find your purpose a little quicker, because not everybody needs college. Not everybody needs that. So, if you can find that a lot sooner, then I think it would make your journey less tumultuous, right? And you won't have to go down this road that I went down where, I went to college and I was an engineer for all these years, only to turn around and realize that, man, this isn't this isn't really what I want to do. And I'm not regretful of any of those things, because the engineering journey definitely made me who I am. It gave me the ability to provide for my family, for my kids, to create a great life for myself, to be able to help my mother out and my sister out. However, I wouldn't have been mad had I realized my purpose a lot sooner and just attacked it and went after it.
How do you discover your purpose?
To me, I believe you discover it by being willing to that's a really good question, but I would say I discovered mine through the support system that I have. It wasn't something that just came from me. I knew what my purpose was, but having a strong group of people who support you and tell you to go forward and pursue those dreams helps. Again, I would have never walked away from my job had my wife not told me to leave. So I would tell anybody, if you want to discover your purpose, first off, you have to have an honest conversation with yourself. You have to block out all negativity and tell yourself that you can do what it is you aim to do. And then secondly, you want to surround yourself with people who either are doing what you want to do, meaning they've already accepted their purpose, they've accepted their truth, and they're walking in it, or you surround yourself with people who aren't going to necessarily kill your dreams, right? Who are going to tell you that you can do anything you want to do. And that's going to be a small circle of people, right? Because most people aren't entrepreneurs. In fact, most people are worker bees. So if you tell the wrong person your dream, they're not going to understand the fact that you want to go out here and take on all these risks and own a company and have employees that you're responsible for. So you have to be careful who you share your dreams with. So being honest with yourself and surrounding yourself with people who are going to propel you forward are the two biggest ways that I think you can walk in your purpose.
Let's talk about work-life balance, including family. How do you make that happen?
You make it happen through freedom, right? I'm free in my mind because I don't have to work. So there's a different way that I approach work, right? When I went back to work after my 10-month hiatus, I wasn't looking for work. Somebody contacted me, a headhunter, and they said, hey, I have the perfect opportunity. And I told them, I said, hey, listen, I'm not working over 40 hours. I got 2 young kids. And once, when me and my wife conceived these kids, the agreement was 50-50. And that's how it should be. My wife has every right to pursue her dreams and her own individual journey. Like, the agreement wasn't for her to be the traditional mother and stay at home and cooking. It wasn't that. It was 50-50. She has her dreams. I have mine. So when I went back to work, they interviewed me, but I was interviewing them as well. And I was going to hold them accountable to that interview, to everything they said in there. And since I've been back to work, there's been times where they tried to get me to work over 40 or things have come up. And I would tell them, nope, remember what you said in the interview, right? And they like, hey, I don't mind walking away. My mentality is that I don't need you. And when you're in a relationship with something, whether it's a company, whether it's your boyfriend or your wife or so on and so forth, when the other person knows that you need them, then they can sometimes knowingly or unknowingly take advantage of that. And that's important. So with my job, they can sense that I don't need them. And as a result, I'm able to create that work-life balance. And as a result, also, I'm able to say no to things without feeling guilty, without feeling like, oh man, maybe they're going to look at me as not being a good worker, or maybe they're going to think that I'm lazy or this, that, and the third. I don't care because I know who I am and I know why I'm working here. I'm not working here for your validation. I'm working here for me. I have my goals. I have my dreams. I have things that I'm trying to do outside of work. So I would say, if someone wants to create work-life balance, it's up to them to understand and recognize the relationship that they have with that company and to be willing to stand on things. And you can't stand on things unless you have multiple streams of revenue and other ways to take care of yourself, because you got to be willing to deal with whatever would come from that. If you were to get fired or laid off, believe me, every decision I'm making, every time I say no to somebody at my company, I understand and I'm well aware of that. And it allows me to just kind of move the way I move and create that work-life balance.
What book would you recommend and why?
I would say The Alchemist by, I think, Paulo Coelho. That's something that helped me to understand my purpose and to be able to accept my truth. That book was monumental because it kind of follows this young boy who's on a journey of finding his truth and accepting it and walking in his purpose and all of those things, right? And then he gets to the point to where he becomes the alchemist. And the alchemist is somebody who can take, cheap metals and things of that nature and basically turn it into gold. And me coming from a single parent household, growing up on the east side of Detroit, becoming who I am now, that's basically a representation of alchemy, right? So that's the one book. And the other book is by Dr. Claude Anderson. It's called Black Labor, White Wealth. That's a really important book that I think every Black person should read. In fact, he has another book called Powernomics. He has I think maybe 5 books total that I think everybody should get their hands on, especially if you're Black in America.
If you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you, David, to ask the question and answer it.
Ooh, that's a really good question. If I conducted this interview, what would I ask myself? I would basically ask myself, why? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Like, what drives me to do it? And the thing that drives me to do it is wanting to leave behind a legacy that lives long after I'm no longer here. Like, that's my biggest fear. My fear isn't dying. My fear is not being able to live after death.
Speaking of legacy, when it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
I just want to be remembered as somebody who was flawed, but had good intentions. I think that's the biggest thing. We live in a cancel culture. As soon as you say the wrong thing, people are trying to cancel you. It happened to Kevin Hart. It happened to Jimmy Kimmel. It's happening to so many people. Ellen DeGeneres. It's happening to a lot of people, especially Black. The minute you say something that people disagree with, Deshaun Jackson, Philadelphia Eagles football player, Nick Cannon, anti-Semitic comments. I really just want people to remember me for being flawed, but yet standing on my truth and being willing to take risk. And sometimes taking risks may mean that you might not say things that are trendy or that, people agree with. It doesn't mean people are going to necessarily agree with you, but you have to be able to stand on it. So I just want people to remember me for having integrity. Even if I wasn't always right, I felt right about what I said at that time. So, yeah.
Talk about self-care. What does self-care look like to you, David?
Self-care to me is honestly me and my wife are different, right? So my wife will come into the house and she'll cut on the radio, she'll cut on the TV, and she's kind of like, she likes noise. Me, I'm the complete opposite. So self-care for me is literally just sitting on the couch, closing the blinds a little bit so not that much sunlight comes through, and just being able to sit in my own thoughts. That's important. And I think that's where a lot of self-discovery happens, is when you're alone and you're able to sit in your thoughts. But I like being around myself. It took me a while to get to the point to where I loved myself the way I do. So self-care is really that, just having moments where I can be in my own thoughts. And me and my wife, we give each other a lot of that, and almost to the point to where we don't even have to tell each other. Like, if I can sense that my wife is somewhat overwhelmed or has a lot on her mind, I'll just take the kids to the park or take them over to my mother's house for some hours. We do a good job of making sure that we take care of each other without the person having to ask. But even if my wife doesn't do that, right, I can't expect her to be a mind reader. Then I can still be like, hey, you mind if I go away for an hour and just take a walk? So self-care is really just being able to take that time and be alone in your own thoughts.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Fun Facts Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and what I'd like you to do is give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
Yes.
The last movie you saw?
Whoa, man, this is a good one. The last movie I saw was Power Project with Jamie Foxx on Netflix.
You relaxed doing what?
I relax in peace, complete silence. That's how I relax.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Favorite rapper is Jay-Z. I mean, obviously that's a popular thing or whatever. 9 out of 10 people my age will tell you Jay-Z, probably, maybe 8 out of 10. My favorite singer, I would say, is Donny Hathaway. Me and my wife go back and forth between him and Luther Vandross. She's on the Luther Vandross side. I'm a Donny Hathaway person.
Your favorite dance song?
Favorite dance song would be, and I don't really dance much, but I would have to say some type of R. Kelly, Happy People. R. Kelly, I know he got canceled recently, so this was before all of them allegations, but yeah, Happy People, that definitely was a good dance song.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Every week, no matter what, I would say avocado.
Your favorite month?
Favorite month, I would say January.
Hit the gym or work out?
Work out.
David, thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, why don't you share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you and do business with your company?
At Tinbridge Films, that's at Tinbridge Films on Instagram is the best way to connect with me or do business.
Thank you. That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.